Guess that's a little extra countdown tonight. But welcome to our Wednesday night show right here at the Sports Krib, uh, home of the Sports Krib Network. Um, there has been a lot of interesting things that happened since last week, but mainly I have Dave back, and I'm hoping that Don and some of the other guys will join us. But Dave, how are you doing? And how was your trip out here on the West Coast?
It was good. How you doing, James? Can't
Oh,
believe I was all the way out there and then I couldn't be on the show.
yeah, yeah. Well, maybe next time, you said you might be coming down this way, so
Yeah, I'll be back in November, and then we're gonna be actually this is for a wedding, so we'll be down in La Jolla, so not too far from you.
yeah, yeah. Right across the bridge. Yeah, as a matter of fact,
Yeah,
you'll really like La Jolla. Uh, uh, are you staying in La Jolla itself?
yeah. We're staying at a I think it's some like resort or something. It's like where the wedding party is going to
Okay.
be.
Uh,
And then we'll spend a couple days there, but I think a couple days up in LA, and so I hope to see you when it would be great to meet you in person whenever we're there.
yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, the VA is out in La Jolla, and there's couple colleges and stuff like that. Uh, One thing that I don't know, and maybe it's just me, but if anybody is around, they might know. La Jolla is the only place where I have never seen a homeless person.
Is that right?
When when I first came out here, I worked out at Barnes in La Jolla, which is a grocery chain, part of Kroger's. And this was in 2005. And at that time, you would see a few. They were building onto the college out there. There's a couple of schools, and they were also building onto the VA. But I would say since 2020, there has to be some type of ordinance or something out there because you don't see a tent, you don't see a person pulling a shopping cart. I mean, you know, very affluent community, but usually, I mean, I've seen homeless in Beverly Hills, but La
Right.
Jolla, it seems to be different. So, I know you don't do the basketball thing, but I got to ask you, w- is there some kind of rumor about Skynes being traded?
Well, I mean, they're talking about that, but I mean, I actually went to a Pirates game Monday night, and Keller was pitching, and actually he pitched well.
Was that the 1-0 game?
What's that?
Was that the 1-0 game?
No, 7-1. It was against the Reds. It was the first game against the Reds.
I was.
And in the starting pitcher, he did well, and then it was tied 1-1, and then the outfielder he dropped a ball that should have been an out, and he still had a play at second that he missed, and they scored on that run to go ahead 2-1. And then the bullpen came in, and then the bullpen, Bednar has lost his mojo. I mean, and they just got trounced. But they had a good starting pitcher, but they don't have any bats, and their bullpen is just bad. And now I think that the Pirates have said, there's people talking about him being traded. The Pirates are saying, no, we're building around him, but they haven't built anything around him yet. And the problem is that the PR public relations for the Pirates has just been horrendous. They've had one bad story after the other. They removed the 21 logo, the Roberto Clemente logo from the right field wall, replace it with advertisement. They were going to throw away all these memory bricks
Right, right.
until that, and then they caught themselves on that. So they make one gaffe after the other, and then plus it's the team's performance is bad. So they fired the manager Shelton. He got fired a couple games ago, but frankly, that's not the problem.
Right.
They have a talent problem and a supporting role. They have a couple good pitchers, but that's not enough. And so it's going to be a long season, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether that was a rumor or or exactly what, because of course there's talk about the ownership, the whole 9 yards, like you said, one thing after another.
Yeah,
So
the team says no. I mean, they're building around him, but the problem is that they've had to backtrack on so many things that they've said. It wouldn't be surprising if they traded him, which would be pathetic. And they probably had maybe 10,000 fans at the game on Monday, and it's nice to be. The park is beautiful. Got to spend a good time with Alex Kozora and Josh Carney and Troy Montgomery from Steelers Depot. It was nice to spend some time with them, but the product that the Pirates are putting out it's pathetic.
yeah,
I mean, to the point of where late in the game there was chance of sell the team, and then they turn up the music to try to drown out.
yeah. I mean, it's, I would just like for him to be competitive for a few years. I mean, that to me would be a welcome change.
That's and frankly, that's what most of the fans are. Just be competitive and at least make some trades. Where you look like you're trying to improve the team, and they don't even do that.
Yeah, I
They,
mean, I think, like you said, that there are many games where you don't score more than a run, and
oh yeah.
you know, uh,
Well, one game Skane gave up 2 runs, they lost. Another game he gave up 1 run, they lost. They've gone like I think it's 23 or 24 games without scoring more than 4 runs. They set some type of a record.
yeah,
The the, the
one
team
of
that
those
did
one of those records that you don't want, right?
exactly.
So, by any chance, do we have a Sue's Corner tonight?
We do. So she's talking flag football. So Sue's Corner. There will be flag football. Yep, that sport we thought was reserved for college intramurals and family reunions is now an Olympic sport. Not only that, but NFL players will be able to play. The approved resolution authorizes the league to work with the NFL Players Association, the International Federation of American Football, and the relevant Olympic authorities to implement rules governing the participation of NFL players in flag football, which makes its Olympic debut in 2028. Only one player from each NFL roster will be able to play for Team USA. That's 32 players. But if any players have dual citizenship, they can play for another country. I'm sure this decision was met with some dismay by the Flag Football League. I mean, who's going to pass up having Lamar Jackson as a quarterback or Saquon Barkley as a running back representing the U.S.? So these folks that already play in the league will most likely get squeezed out. But the Olympic Committee is smart. They know that television ratings are made with superstars, the Katie Ledeckis, the Simone Biles, the NBA players. So for them, this is the next logical step. People will watch a game that is kind of juvenile. Sorry if you love flag football, but it isn't, quite honestly, crazy hard like water polo if there are famous people playing. It's a brilliant PR move. I'm just not that crazy about it, to be honest. But it will be fun, maybe, to see what kind of teams other countries field. We shall see. So that's Sue's corner. So she's kind of not feeling the flag football in the Olympics.
Well, I kind of share Sue's enthusiasm for for the game myself. I mean, um, I, I don't, I got to put my black socks on here because I remember when we were criticizing the Russians about having professional athletes, the Soviet bloc, against the world, and they were using steroids, and they were doing this and they were doing that, and all of a sudden we had the dream team, and we have the, the there is no is there still such a thing as the AAU day?
Well, the AAU still exists, but amateurism in the Olympics does not. And that's, we've come a long way from, when Jim Thorpe was stripped of his Olympic gold medals because of playing a game of minor league baseball. Where he made like $100 or a few $100. And now it's just been professionalized. I think part of what happened was when it used to be a lot of college players would make up the USA team and they would win gold, and then finally they lost, and that just wasn't acceptable.
Right,
So,
they lost 2 years in a row, and that was the end of college basketball in the Olympics.
yeah, but I mean, that said, I mean, at least basketball in the Olympics is a real sport, and or even soccer. That's they're playing the sport that's real. Uh, Football is a contact sport. Flag having the NFL players playing flag football, that's not the sport that they play. And so it's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
There,
athletic. You got to be athletic to play flag football. At a high level, but is it really an Olympic sport? I don't know.
there's someone to get hurt, Dave. I mean, you got Jefferson and these guys talking about, uh, uh, I already think that there's, injuries because, just because of the way that these guys, the difference in training, and the way people use their bodies. I mean, you know, LeBron's still playing basketball at 40 something years old. We're still pursuing Aaron Rodgers at 40 some years old. I mean, so, yeah, but it's, yeah. You missed my events last week, but I rewarned them and gave them to you this week. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
All right.
Uh, Dave, Nick Saban won an Emmy. his first year, and he's been having some talks about perhaps his role in college football. Um, I remember when uh, now Judge Shapiro told LeBron when he was making his protest that he shouldn't be involved in social issues. He should shut up and dribble. I kind of feel the same way about the executive branch moving into college sports. And Nick Saban says that he doesn't really see a need for it. What do you think, Dave?
Well, the executive branch has gotten involved in football before. And this
Yes,
goes
they did.
all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt. And this had more to do with college football, but it impacted all of football because they were going to ban. They were literally going to stop college football because of the number of deaths and injuries. And so president did step in, and then that resulted in some, basically the creation of the NCAA came out of that. A lot of the rules that we know today came out of that change, and it made the game safer. You had an immediate reduction on the number of deaths that were happening in the game.
But this
And
issue isn't about safety. This is about NIL.
yeah, and the thing is Nick Saban. I guess what his point is we don't need to have a commission to identify what the problems are. We already know what the problems are, and we just need to get some people to get together and to come up with the solutions to it. And okay, but Nick Saban is the first one to say, "Well, I'm not the guy to lead the effort." So he's not willing to be the tip of the spear. He's saying, yeah, we should do this, and we need leadership to do this. But Nick Saban says, well, I'm not the person to lead the effort. And so the thing is if Nick Saban's not willing to lead the effort, who is? And if
Well,
they don't have, and if they don't have anybody to lead the effort, maybe they do need to have some type of a federal commission that not only identifies the problems, but usually what a presidential commission will do will also propose uh, solutions. And usually the way a commission is made up, they will have different congressmen, different senators, but then they'll have subject matter experts from all the fields. And so basically my answer to Nick Saban is hey, if you're not willing to lead the effort yourself, well, then why are you criticizing the president for saying, hey, here's a problem here, maybe we need a commission?
but wasn't that the the plan for the NCAA? I mean, there
Well,
are
where
things.
is it?
There,
Where's the plan?
there are, well, I mean, that's what I with the new NIL, which is still to me making college sports professional. Uh, with the new NIL, I think you have to do just like everything else. You have to develop and have a strategy, just like
Correct.
when you go to a class, there's you build a strategy. But is do we want government involved in more things? I mean, aren't there legislative things that maybe should take precedent, like maybe the budget, or I mean something like that? We're supposed to be eliminating waste. I mean,
Well,
aren't
hey,
they?
the government's been putting on puppet shows in Syria. The government's capable of multitasking and doing a lot of different things. And I would say, ideally, no. I think, and maybe, this comes from Trump's art of the deal. When he says something like this commission, well, then maybe this will wake somebody up to say, hey, let's get together and let's come up with a plan ourselves. Otherwise, somebody else is going to come in and tell us what to do. And my problem with Nick Saban is it's not so much of what he's saying, it's his unwillingness to lead the effort.
Well, I mean, the SEC commissioner, I'm sure, who would be willing to step in there because he's all for it.
But who's come in to lead the effort? Nobody has. And so what's happened over the last several years is NIL, they've well, it's just not only NIL. You have the transfer portal.
Right, right.
You
Well,
have
all
the
the accessories that come with it. I mean, because now you also have Title IX, which was not part of the original deal. Uh,
right, and then
you know,
and then you have different states have different laws.
right, right.
They have different takes, and so okay, well then who's going to take charge? And so, what I get out of Trump, I don't think that this is something that Trump wants to do, but it's kind of like in the absence of anybody else doing it, it's like, okay, well, then we'll form a commission. And I'm sure that if all of us, like if Nick Saban were to say, if his response was to have been, you know what, this isn't about identifying problems, we have to come up with solutions. I might not necessarily have the solutions myself, but I'm willing to lead an effort to bring people in from college football to come up with a plan.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
he didn't do that. He backed off, and I don't
yeah.
respect that. He's a millionaire. He's worth millions. He's made millions off of the game. Then step up and lead the way.
But I
And if he
think,
did, and if he did that, you know what? The whole idea of a federal commission would go away.
okay, that's interesting. All right, okay.
It's
Let's talk.
the reason the whole reason that even came up is because there's a vacuum, because there is no plan, there is no you just, it's going willy-nilly right now.
Right. It's kind of left up to the states, or I think it's going to end up with what do they call now, the Power Four. You got the Big 20, the SEC. I mean, that are going to be huge, and they're going to be the power brokers. Uh,
Right. Now,
without a doubt.
in the past, who you would have expected to do something about it is the NCAA, but what's been shown over the last few years is they've become a paper tiger.
Yeah, more paper than tiger,
Right.
but you know, but let's talk about a couple things that me and Bo had talked about. Me, Bo, and Bill, we talked about this last week, uh, and we were talking about the Notre Dame Clemson 12-year deal. Now, I look and I see, Notre Dame is put Wisconsin on their schedule to play at Lambeau Field. They have they're looking forward to a duel of quarterbacks between Notre Dame's quarterback and Miami's. I'm thinking, like with you're scheduling games in Miami, you're scheduling games in Lambeau, you're playing Clemson. I'm kind of thinking, like they might be like kind of testing out the waters there to see, like, what's it like to travel. That was one of those things that we were talking about. Plus, you got, well, it hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure that sooner or later there's going to be college football games in Europe also. But we'll talk about that later. But what do you think? How much longer do you think that Notre Dame is going to stay independent, or do you see all of these different little, like Wisconsin part of the the Big 18, Clemson part of the SEC, Miami, AC? What's your thoughts there?
Well, I think it's part of a calculated strategy. And first of all, the game with Wisconsin at Lambeau Field, that was originally scheduled for 2020, and that was canceled because of COVID. Um, and it was part of what they called the Shamrock Series, which was supposed to be this neutral site games. And they did play Wisconsin at Soldier Field, for example, the next year in 2021. That was a part of that series. And the same thing with Miami. Now, Lambeau makes sense because I think Notre Dame will be the home team. Uh, because Lambeau Field, Curly Lambeau is a Notre Dame alum who the stadium's named after. The founder of the Packers is actually a former
Right.
uh, member of the Irish. And so I think what it is, it's that Notre Dame, I think that they want to remain independent. They're not looking at joining any conferences. And so they're looking for, like with this series with Clemson, they're trying to develop a schedule that's going to attract a lot of viewership and take have competitive games, to continue with their national prominence and to maintain. This is part of their strategy to maintain their independence. And so if these games continue to work and if they can continue to schedule some of these Big Ten teams, teams like Miami, that are well known. You go back to when they had, what was it, the convicts versus the
Right.
Catholics versus the convicts game, this kind of thing. And if they can do that, well,
You're
they're going to
dating
stay.
us,
They'll
Dave.
stay independent for as long as they can.
You're dating us there, Dave. Yeah. uh, yeah, but I just see all of these big conferences, like I said, the Big 18, the SEC is constantly expanding. You're going to see, more of these big conferences. And if you got an 18-team conference, you don't really have to schedule outside your conference.
Well, right. Well, that maybe eventually they'll be squeezed out where they're forced to join a conference, and simply because they can't find good enough caliber teams to play. But I think that they'll continue to do that for as long as they can. And then what conference wouldn't want Notre Dame in their conference? I mean, they're a big money draw. I mean,
I mean, of course, that's why the ACC, they use they play basketball, and I believe that they might play lacrosse too. There are certain sports where they are a member of, you know, uh, where they
the
play.
ACC,
Yeah,
or maybe it's a couple conferences. Do they have different sports in different conferences?
I'm pretty sure they do because I'm pretty sure that they don't wrestle. I mean, not wrestle. Play lacrosse uh, independent. I'm pretty sure, and I know that their hockey team is a member of the conference.
Yeah, but for their football team, that's their big money draw. I mean, I know Notre Dame fans in the Pittsburgh area that even when they were mediocre, they never gave up on Notre Dame. I mean, they have a very strong national following, and obviously they've been making money off of the TV contracts. And so, for them, it's like, well, why share if we don't have to?
Yeah,
And now,
yeah,
now at some point, they may be forced if they cannot schedule high enough caliber games. Because, like you say, like, hey, the Big Ten, they have to play all their games against other Big Ten teams. And I think the other thing that's starting to happen is if they expand the college football playoff to like 16 teams, well, then like the Big Ten, they only play 9 regular season games. They play one less regular season game in order to make up for a playoff game.
right, right.
So
But
so that and that's gonna make it even harder.
yeah, that's another thing that they're talking about is that 16 team playoff. Um, I think I would be for it. I would just have to see how it was scheduled out. Are we going to add more bowl games? Are we going to have elimination? Uh, I don't know. Uh, I like the idea because we get to see more college football, but once again, it's how is it going to kind of shape out here? So
Well, I think, I mean, one of the positive things out of the NIL and the transfer portal is I really do think that it's distributed the talent among more teams. And so it's harder now for a team just to stockpile, where their third or fourth string could take on most college programs. That's hard now because those third and fourth string players, they're going into the transfer portal so that they can be a starter somewhere else.
and not only that, remember there's what only 84 scholarships available, and
And they're
20 what was it 20? I mean the total is 104, right?
they're I think it's 107 that they're limiting the rosters to.
Is it 107? Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's affected a lot of teams. A lot of teams had a lot more than that, and so now you might hurt the people that the walk-ons.
well, that was that was something that that we had discussed in other shows. Exactly how is it going to affect the walk-ons, and are there going to be any more walk-ons when you're what is it? I thought it was 84 scholarships. Maybe it's 87, and then 20. I forget exactly the breakdown, but we had discussed it earlier. But yeah. Um, David, it's been a while. Well, it's only been a couple of weeks, but it seems like it's been a while. We missed Bill tonight, but it seems like the NFL has decided that they're going to have a new award for a lineman in 2026, and it's called the Protector of the Year. What do you think, Dave? Is this a good thing, or does this have like that participation trophy type feel to it?
Um, I mean, number one, the NFL has like 11 individual awards.
Precisely. That's
Most
what
valuable player,
it's.
offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, and then when you add in other organizations, there's like 50 awards given to individual players. But
Yeah.
that said, the linemen are like the unsung heroes, and then I think that there's a Mark Madden award for an offensive line unit, but there's no award for like quarterbacks can get an award, running backs can get an award, but offensive linemen and a lot of the
Dave,
defensive players of the year end up being defensive linemen, but it's the offensive linemen that often get overlooked.
Dave, have you seen what we're paying for offensive tackles?
Oh, I know that they're getting the money. I mean, as are the edge rushers, and as are the quarterbacks. Uh, but to have one award, to identify the outstanding offensive lineman, I mean, to me, it's not a problem. I mean, it's just like one more. Okay, instead of 11, you have 12, and then there's already 50, so you have 51. It's not a big thing, and I think for the offensive linemen that normally don't get a lot of name recognition, I'm fine with it, because I mean they play, actually they play more than most of the other skill positions, because the skill positions, depending on the packages, they go in and out. When you
Right.
look at the snap counts, the offensive linemen pretty much have close to 100% of the offensive snaps in their game. And on defense, you might have a defensive back that plays 100% of the snaps, but generally speaking, the other defenders, because of all the different packages they have, um, like T.J. Watt, he what does he play? 70% of the defensive snaps for the Steelers. Where the offensive linemen, they're in there, close to 100% of the time. The five linemen. So I don't have a problem with it at all. And I don't see it as a participation trophy, because these guys work hard, and so to give them a moment, quarterbacks get their moment, wide receivers, running backs, you know, because an offensive lineman will never be the offensive player of the year. That's
No,
just not going to happen.
no. But I do think that there'll be more left tackles getting this award than anybody else. But we'll
Could
see.
be, could be, or centers.
Yeah, but right now, when you look at the position and the way it's being paid, but hey, like you said, there, are we, you know, yeah, well, protector of the year speaks for itself. I mean, it can't be a defensive player either. So, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Um, I know we don't have a Bowen tonight, but uh, I'm looking at what Matt Stafford is saying about his new wide receiver Devontae Adams, and I'm looking at what he did with the Texans last year when he had C.J. Stroud as his quarterback, and I'm looking at Cooper Cup, and do you see that much difference between those two wide receivers, especially when you put last year side by side when Cooper didn't have his best year either? What do you think? Who do you think won that trade? The Seahawks or the Rams? Well, actually, it wasn't a trade. I think Cooper went to the Seahawks as a free agent, and
yeah,
Devontae Adams also went to the Rams as a free agent, I believe.
yeah. I'm thinking that Devontae Adams might have a little more left in the tank than Cooper Cup. Is what I'm thinking. I mean, Cooper Cup's been a great receiver, but he's had some injuries. Yeah, he's not getting younger. Neither's Devontae Adams, but I just think that my opinion is that Adams might have a little bit more gas in the tank than Cook.
Okay. Yeah. That's so. Fitzgerald is saying that Marvin Harrison Jr. Has a chance to be one of the great ones in his words, and he says he's only going to get better. But we usually think of wide receivers as hitting a sophomore slump. Do you think that if he does hit a sophomore slump, that we always talk about what the Cardinals need? Do you think that that will change their draft status? Not their status, but their draft needs next year.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
it kind of reminds me of other. What it is, it's like, does he? It's not him alone. Okay, does he have like a number two receiver that's going to attract attention? And so, the difficulty for Marvin Harrison is now the NFL has a gauge on what he can do. And so what that means, and they have a full season of tape on him. So what that means is that defensive coordinators now can scheme on how do we shut this guy down. Well, the way you avoid getting him shut down is, hey, I have a number two, I have a number three receiver, I have a tight end, I got other players I can go to that are going to take the heat off of him if they smother Harrison to open him up. So I think, in terms of his sophomore slump, I think he's an outstanding athlete, and I think it's more in terms of, okay, well, what has Arizona done in order to take the attention away from Marvin Harrison, so that they just can't blanket the guy all the time.
well,
And
they had their own Travis Kelsey. What's the tight end? McBride? What
yeah,
is it?
McBride. Yeah. So they got McBride, and what I would be looking for is, okay, who's your number two receiver? It's kind of like you look at a lot of great wide receivers, and they always had that number two. You had Harrison, Marvin, his dad with the Colts. He always had a number two that was catching a lot of balls. Jerry Rice with San Francisco, same thing. You had Lynn Swan and John Stallworth together. So I think they should be thinking in terms of tandems rather than individual wide receivers.
Okay. You're just going to get all the questions tonight, dude. Uh,
I'll answer them the best I can, because some of these teams I'm not way up on, but go ahead and hit me.
well, okay. Let's talk about another guy. Mr. Scott's not here, so we'll talk about his quarterback, J.J. McCartney. He's coming back. We have Sam Howell is going to be his backup. Uh, what's your thoughts? Is J.J. McCartney probably? One reporter says that he's going to be the NFL's biggest wild card. What do you think?
Well, I think that's a good way to describe it, because I think the Viking success is going to depend on how well does JJ McCarthy perform. And if he turns out to be horrible, then the Vikings are going to have, it's not going to be as dominant a season as they have. They're still going to be good. They have too much talent on that roster. But I think that they calculated that, hey, we don't need Sam Darnold anymore. We're ready to go with our young guy. And now we're going to find out, is that young guy ready? And because Sam Howell's not in the plans. He's just there in
It's a
case their
backup.
guy, as a
Yeah,
backup. Just if
yeah.
their guy gets hurt, he's not poised to
No,
lead this team on to the promised land. And that mantle they put on JJ McCarthy. And they believe in him. He hasn't gotten to play a whole lot. And so now this year we're going to find out. And that is the wild card for the Vikings, I think, this season. And if he performs well, then they're going to be a very, very strong team. Like for example, like with Purdy, I'll use that as an example. He got drafted by the right team. He was Mr. Irrelevant, but when San Francisco got him, they had all these weapons around him. The running
right.
back, McCaffrey, the receivers, the tight end. They had a good offensive line, and then they had a system so that he could operate within that system. And now he's making $50 million, right? Well, if Cleveland had drafted Purdy, he wouldn't be making $50 million now, right? And so now for McCarthy, it's kind of like you got Justin Jefferson, you got the tools in place. They got the Hawkinson, the tight end. They got the tools in place for him to succeed. Can he make it work? And do they have the system that he's going to succeed in? And I think for the Vikings, they do, and really the wild card is JJ McCarthy going to make it work? And just like Purdy, Purdy could have fallen on his face in San Francisco, but he didn't. And so this is the opportunity that McCarthy has.
Yeah, if he could win that division, you know, hey, I'm sure all of Minnesota would be celebrating getting back to even the semifinals. But that's going to be a tough division, and uh, we're going to talk about them before we talk about our Steelers. But of course, we know that Pickens is now a Cowboy. Um, CD seems pretty excited to have him. So does Dak. Um, According to Philadelphia's wide receiver, um, he says that perhaps the Eagles should be a little more concerned about Dallas. Not just worrying about the Commanders in their rearview mirror. Uh, so we still don't have a contract for Parsons. And what do you think Jerry's guys are going to do here? I know you don't necessarily follow the Cowboys, but I mean, Parsons still unsigned. Uh, the addition of Pickens, but they also lost their backup quarterback, Cooper Rush. What's your thoughts on Jerry and the boys, and why do you think they haven't signed Parsons?
They're probably talking. Uh,
They've been
come.
talking for a while.
Takes two, and what it comes down to there is maybe guaranteed money. Could be incentives, could be a lot of things. But here's the thing: if Jerry wants to, he can sign tomorrow. He can just agree to whatever whatever Parsons' agent is asking, and just sign it. And at the same time, Parsons could make it in and just agree to whatever Jerry Jones is offering them. And obviously, they just haven't, met this middle ground yet. And there's time. I mean, I wouldn't worry so much about that until training camp. I think it'll probably happen. But the other thing with Dallas is, going back to the offensive side of the ball, picking up where I was talking about thinking of wide receivers as a tandem. Well, how about a tandem of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens? How would you like to be the secondary that has to cover those two down the field? That's I think in that sense, Dallas really, they made a good score on that deal, because when I look at the talent of those two players, I wouldn't want to be the secondary having to cover both of them at the same time. And then you still have your running back. You still so Dallas could be a dangerous team. Now on defensive,
They don't have a running back. I mean, Dow left. The only 1,000-yard rusher. Where did he go? Jacksonville or Tennessee or something
oh,
like
did he
that.
go to Jacksonville?
Yeah. Okay.
So
Dow,
who do they have? Who do they have at running back now?
running back by committee. I don't even know. I think they cut what's his name, right? Uh, who did Jerry bring back? Um, he's an older running back. He came back. He was a Cowboy before. Um, yeah, I could just look it up. What am I doing?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Javante,
Uh, Go
is
ahead.
it Javante Williams?
Yeah. They have Javante Williams, and as far as I know, what did they draft someone or
Yeah, Jadon Blue in the
yeah,
fifth round, and that's
yeah,
somebody that some Steelers fans are kind of like Blue. Well, I mean, the thing is depending on what happens with the running back room, but their offense might be okay, and their passing offense. I like the tandem of Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Now, I'm talking about their talent. Now, the big question is, how will George Pickens fit into that clubhouse? And so far, he's saying all the right things. He said that it's a different culture in Dallas,
right.
uh, and so we'll see how he fits. I think part of the problem, what happened in Pittsburgh, is there was never a question about his talent,
No, no,
but there were the intangibles. There were the tantrums he threw. There were the reports about him being constantly late. Just not the Christmas game, but times when they had to have the plane waiting for him because he was late, holding up the rest of the team. And I know that Mike Tomlin, when he talks in his interviews, he's also he's communicating to more than just the fans. A lot of times he's communicating to the players. And on more than one occasion, he brought up the maturity, the need for George Pickens to mature and to develop as a man. And I think, excuse me one second. And I think that what happened was Mike Tomlin kind of decided, well, he wasn't going to develop anymore in Pittsburgh. And so I think as much as anything it was Mike Tomlin's call to trade Pickens to say, okay, I've done what I can for him, and now it's up to him. And so now Pickens has an opportunity, completely new club. He knows that, hey, they let him go in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, yeah. I, I'm not sad to see Pickens go because I'm one of those. I mean, we've been through the whole Antonio Brown thing. I mean, so we're used to having divas, and we're used to. But Tomlin usually gives them enough rope to hang themselves. So that's usually how that goes. So I wasn't. It's not that I was mad about losing Pickens so much as who the hell was going to be the number two if you're making Metcalf number one? Are you? Is it all? Is all of a sudden Austin the third going to be your number two? I mean, it well,
That's exactly the problem. And so where Dallas, now they had that tandem, Pittsburgh created a hole where now they don't have that tandem. I would have
and
liked to have seen a Pickens in a DK Metcalf. That would have been kind of interesting.
or like I said, I would, I know probably it wasn't feasible. Sounds good on paper, but I would have liked to see if they could have pursued the kid Garrett Morris from the Jets,
Right?
and and possibly made a trade, Pickens for Morris or something like that. But you know, so I got my Black Sox on tonight, Dave,
All
and
right.
I'm really, really wondering what's going on with my guys. So I got a series of questions here now. Last week, Bill was here and he kind of gave his version, but I'm going to ask you these. Oh, first of all, do you have your tickets for Dublin yet?
No, I
I
did
see.
not. They had a lottery for season ticket holders, and I wasn't one of them that got selected. So one of my buddies did. He has two tickets. He's taken his girlfriend. I'm still going to Ireland. I did booking a flight to Dublin. So I'll be there that weekend with or without tickets, but I have to wait until they go public, with the NFL tickets.
Okay.
And hopefully I don't get soaked too bad for
You have to you're gonna have to use some of those contacts you built up over the years. Networking,
right.
baby, networking.
Exactly. There you go. But I will be in Dublin with the I have a hotel room, and with or without the tickets, because it'll be a carnival atmosphere. So
Oh, most definitely, yes, yes, yes. Yeah. So you're gonna go get your pint. No, no, that's Scotland, right? With the pints. Uh,
no, they have pints there. Yeah, yeah, Guinness. You get a pint of Guinness
okay.
or Harp. That's another one of their beers. So
Okay. So getting back to our Steelers here, Dave.
tell me.
Uh, Omar Khan says he didn't consider the Pickens trade a disappointment. Now, from me on the outside looking in, I thought it was a disappointment because I thought I didn't think that we got the proper compensation for it. Now, a third rounder, and then we exchanged what, fifth and sixth round picks or something like that. Uh, so I thought it was a matter of it came down to a matter of whatever team gave us the best offer, not necessarily in the context of, well, we're stockpiling draft picks, but that was my interpretation. So, uh, is there a hidden agenda here between in this pursuit of Aaron Rodgers? I read today in Heavy on Steelers. The man is saying that he has personal issues. He wants to spend time with a close friend or family member that possibly has cancer. This man is constantly telling you, that I don't really know if I want to play football. And I'm saying, is this the attitude that you want your quarterback to have? I mean, we are still trying to win games here. So we have a weak O line, which is not going to protect an Aaron Rodgers. We got mediocre wide receivers, as you know, what, DK and then the rest. And we don't have a number one running back. Not really. I mean, we got it by inheritance, but is he? Is he really going to give us that studied 1,000 yards that we got from Najee Harris? And I'm starting to think that you know this is Tomlin's last year, right? 26. Is it 26? Is last year, Dave?
No, 27.
26. Okay, so we have one more year, and could this be Mike Tomlin's last run for a coach, or is it time to move on from Omar Khan and this kind of haphazard approach that he has? Like you said, like we had a GM. If you lost a wide receiver, you plugged in a wide receiver. As I just said, we got a weak O line. We have no number one running back. We have competent at best wide receivers. So uh, what's going on here? I mean, is it time for Omar Khan to adopt a different strategy, or is this really, like an all over, just like you were talking about, starting all over in 26, or making 26 the year that we draft for the future. Is there a future for Tomlin in Pittsburgh Day? So that's my right.
All right. Well, let me take those. That's a lot of questions, but I'll take them in turn. First with the Pickens trade, Omar Khan is not gonna. He's kind of like Mike Tomlin. He's always going to try to put the brightest picture on it. So to him, it's a fresh start for everybody involved, and he has confidence in the wide receiver group as it that they have. But objectively speaking, we have the same situation as we had last year when they traded Deontay Johnson. Now, they did get a cornerback that started most of the year, and I think had 5 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. But they never filled that hole for a number 2 wide receiver. And that hurt the offense. And so now we have a similar situation where they traded him. Yeah, they got a third round pick, and And it sounds like that there may have been some players in the locker room that wanted to cut bait with them. But then there's others that expressed surprise that he was leaving, or that he was traded. But see, to me, the big question is okay, how do you fill the hole? Last year, they never filled the hole created whenever they traded Deontay Johnson. And this year,
He
I mean,
created another hole.
they created another hole. And I mean, I love Calvin Austin. You may see him getting a contract extension, but he's no more than a number 3 receiver.
At best.
And Roman Wilson he's an unknown factor. He played 5 snaps. He was hurt at the beginning of training camp last year,
Right.
so we don't know what he brings to the table.
We were expecting more from him, but like you said,
And Robert Woods is a journeyman. He he's, to me, he's like a Van Jefferson, or
a
maybe
Thielen. He's like a Thielen, one of those,
right. And so that's not a replacement for none of those people is a replacement for George Pickens. So I don't know. And right now, the players that are available for trade, the free agent market. You've talked about DJ Moore before. There's Keenan Allen. There's a couple
Ari
guys.
Cooper,
Right.
But these guys are also no replacement for Pickens.
Right. Now they may be an improvement over what they currently have. And so that'll take me to my next point about the pursuit of Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that there's a hidden agenda at all. Basically, what the deal is they feel what Pittsburgh is trying to do. They're trying to do 2 things at the same time, and they may risk getting neither. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to build for the future, and at the same time have as competitive as a team in 2025 that can compete for the playoffs. And
isn't this a repeat of what we did with Big Ben and Kenny Pickens? When you got a guy that's been around, Big Ben, his whole college career, but when they get in the same locker room, Big Ben doesn't take on that mentorship role. And
no. Kenny Pickett was drafted after Ben retired. There was no overlap between Ben and Kenny Pickett.
I thought there was. Well, wasn't there overlap? Well, maybe I was wrong there, but I thought.
Yeah, no, because they had brought in Mitch Trubisky.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And so
he brought him back and let him go. Right.
Yeah. And so part of it, and I've mentioned this before, is Pittsburgh is paying the price for previous misevaluations. Their solution before was Kenny Pickett. That was going to be their guy. They picked him in the first round. And they blew it. He wasn't the guy that they thought he was going to be. And so now they got to reload. And really the next time that they're really going to have an opportunity to do that is going to be in 2026. And so now it's kind of like, well, okay, what do we do for 2025? Well, their plan from last year is okay, we're going to sign Roman Wilson, and then we'll have Kenny Pickett behind him, and maybe Kenny Pickett can develop. Well, then Kenny Pickett didn't want to compete. He opted to leave, so they traded him. So then they brought in Justin Fields. And then the idea is that, okay, well, we'll have either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields in 2025. Art Rooney all but said that. We'll have one of them in 2025. And the problem with free agency is you don't have any control. and Justin Fields opted to go to the Jets. And for whatever reasons, they didn't really make a play to re-sign Roman Wilson. Yeah, there was something off there. Although publicly he seemed to do all the right things. But
You mean Justin
that's
Fields?
no Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Justin Fields, they tried to negotiate a contract with, and he opted to go to the Jets.
Right.
Or
That's
yeah,
where he went. He went to the Jets.
to the Jets.
Fields,
Now Roman
Fields.
Wilson, they never really made a play for, and so they ended up with neither of those quarterbacks. So then they had to bring back Mason Rudolph. And while I like Mason Rudolph a lot, I think that he can win you a couple games, but he's not a starter. He's not somebody that's going to he had his chance in 2019 and he got a concussion and he got a hurt shoulder. And that was it for him. We ended up with Duck Hodges. So now it's like, okay, well, who's the best quarterback available? And in their calculation, for the right price, and for their calculation, it's Aaron Rodgers. And it's just for 2025, because 2026 there'll be.
I understand it's only for 1 year, but like I said, I mean, it just it's like you keep asking that pretty girl to the prom. Keep asking her, keep asking. Finally, she says yes. And then you find out, that it was all makeup, that she wasn't that girl that you thought she was. Well, I mean, we know that Rogers is on his, last leg, so to speak, uh, at least physically. So, I do think, that, if you're going to negotiate, see how much Atlanta is. Well, we did it last year when Denver paid most of Russ's salary. Why can't we pursue a same type of deal with Atlanta? Uh,
Well,
I,
I think the
I think
difficulty
that
there is that Pittsburgh doesn't want to give up too many draft picks. They're stockpiling draft picks. And so the difficulty in trading for Cousins is now, what kind of draft capital are you going to have to give up to bring them to Pittsburgh? What are you going to have to give Atlanta in order to get a hold of them? And right now they don't want to be giving up 2025 draft or 2026 draft picks. And so but I do think that if Aaron Rodgers opts to retire, then maybe they will talk to Atlanta. But then the problem is now, well, how much draft capital? Because they're trying to stockpile their 2026 draft capital so that they can trade up in the draft. So
offer him a 6th-round pick. I mean,
Atlanta is unlikely to take a 6th-round pick. I mean, sure. And perhaps they've even talked, but the thing is Atlanta is going to want more. They're just not going to say, oh, well, whatever you say, we'll trade them for whatever you ask.
Yeah, no, yeah, I understand that, but I'm thinking of like the pursuit effort, and even
and then the other problem that it creates is that if Kirk Cousins becomes our starting quarterback, then that eats into our compensation. So now maybe we don't get 4 compensatory picks.
Okay.
Now maybe we only get 3 compensatory picks.
All right. Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, I could see them making a play for him because they're going to do what they can to be competitive this year. Is it a Super Bowl team? No, but for them, they believe that hey, if we can get to the playoffs, if we're going to be as competitive as we can. That's just been their culture. That's the way they are. They're not going to tank. They're not going to say, well, you see other teams do that where they play hard, but it's kind of like they get rid of players and they don't make any effort to strengthen their roster. And well, hey, they're tanking so that they can get a high draft pick next year. That's not in Pittsburgh's ilk. So that's Rodgers. Now you talk about the team weaknesses. The offensive line is weak, but it's developing. It's a very young line. The one exception you have is Isaac Seumalo, and probably next year is going to be his last year. But then when you look at the rest of the offensive line, a lot of youth. Broderick Jones, it'll be his third season. You have Fautano, it'll be his second season. Zach Frazier, the center, McCormick, it's going to be their second season. So it's a developing young offensive line. So again, I'm hoping that this line continues to improve. The wide receiver core, what we've talked about, and the big question is how do they replace Pickens? And there's not a name. I think that's a hole. Running back, the big thing is Caleb Johnson. And one of the questions we put every Friday night, Steelers Depot, we do our Friday night 5 questions. So we just ask the readers different questions. Well, one of the questions we asked this past Friday is who's going to gain more yardage for their team in 2026 or in 2025? Caleb Johnson or Najee Harris? And so and a lot of people think Caleb Johnson is going to end up with more yardage than Najee Harris, because the Chargers drafted Omarion Hampton. I think he was the first running back selected in the draft. And, from the interviews that I've seen, that they said that Caleb Johnson fits the outside zone offense that Art Smith likes to run. And that Arthur Smith said that he had to adjust his offense last year, probably for Najee Harris, and because Najee Harris is not the outside zone runner. So it's going to be interesting to see how did they score? Did the scouting department score on Caleb Johnson? And if they did, well then okay, I'm fine with Caleb Johnson and Jaylen Warren as a running back tandem. So then you asked about Tomlin's future. His contract runs through 2027. If the Steelers, and very conceivably, the Steelers can have their first losing season this year, their first losing season since 2003. Right now, they're only favored in 6 games. Like if you look at the odds for all the games next season.
Yeah, we play the NFC North.
Right, and so they're only favored in 6 games. But you know what? They were only favored in the preseason. They were only favored in 6 games last year. So if you think about it, in a way, they overperformed last year, and at least according to the odds makers going into the season. So, with Tomlin, and this, Art Rooney, Pittsburgh honors their contracts or coaching contracts. Very rarely do they fire a coach before their contract is up. It's happened I think that there was an offensive line coach that they fired after 1 year, but that's very, very rare. And so even if the Steelers have a losing season, the only way that Mike Tomlin is not back in 2027 is if he quits. But Art Rooney is not going to remove him. He will honor the contract. Now, if they have a losing season this year and if they look bad again in 2026, well, maybe his contract won't be renewed for 2028. I would say all bets are off at that
Right.
point.
That's more or less what I'm saying. Like you said, we don't usually fire a coach, but usually, I don't know if he'll get that extension, or if
Right.
or even uh, a better question is, will he want that extension? After being with the Steelers, for 20 years,
Right.
so, that
Well,
that's
and
another
I
thing.
think, but I think with Mike Tomlin, I don't think he would be adverse to coaching for another team. But from reading his book, which his brother was a heavy contributor to, um, this book about Mike Tomlin, what his brother said is that Mike Tomlin, to know him is to know that all he wants to do is coach. That is who Mike Tomlin is. That's all he wants. And so, and the other thing is he's a bit of a historian. He knows the history, and I could see him trying to stay in Pittsburgh to become the all-time winning coach in Pittsburgh. Um,
Yeah.
but we'll see. I think
I never thought about that, but yeah, you could possibly be right. Yeah.
yeah. And then with Khan, I don't think he's being haphazard. I think he's consciously making moves to strengthen. He's trying to strengthen the team, and right now the offense has been a big project, and in very shortly we're going to see the defense, and we've already seen they've drafted this defensive lineman who may be the guy to take over once Cam Hayward retires, which
Yeah.
probably next year is going to be his last year. So what I
I,
see
I
Colin
like our
doing,
draft choices. I do like our draft choices. I even like, hopefully we can get, a mentor in for Howard. I think, he could possibly be our future. If that would happen, it would put a whole different spin on our, draft class next year.
well, if Will Howard proves to be something more than just a backup quarterback, that would be a coup.
Oh yes, yes, and
That would
and,
be huge.
and as you spoke of, our number one draft choice, if we could get our number one, our running back, and Will Howard would have a future, then yes, I think that would help solve some of our problems. But you know, I say haphazard because I keep seeing the same things happen. Like you said, last year it was Devontae, this year it's George. Not only that, but we also let Najee get away, which these aren't things that we did not necessarily think would happen. It's just that I don't see, I guess, uh, as a Steeler fan, I'm used to the plug and play. If you get rid of a tight end, you put in another tight end.
Well, this is yeah. I mean, what we're seeing is the difference between
That's
um,
why it kind of looks haphazard.
GM styles. I mean, Kevin Colbert was a very I called it belt and suspenders. He would never make a move without having another player to put right in there behind him. He was very conservative. Omar Khan is a lot more conservative, and it's not that they engineered Najee leaving. They had
Yes,
all the power. All they had to do was do the 5th-year extension on him. He was a first-round pick, and they opted not to. And so once they opted not to, well, okay, well then they were showing that hey, they didn't value him as much as maybe Najee Harris would value himself.
right, right.
And so and again, but with these aggressive moves, he's more aggressive. Well, then you leave yourself open, because I think that probably whenever he traded Deontay Johnson, he got the cornerback that they needed, and they probably also got rid of a headache that we might not have
Right,
been as
right.
much aware of. But he probably thought, well, hey, I'll be able to acquire somebody. And it turned out that he couldn't come to terms. And, because they're not, the other thing with Pittsburgh is they're very disciplined in not overspending on players. And so, and that can frustrate people. It's because, well, how come he didn't sign him? Well, because he wanted more than Pittsburgh was willing to pay him. And so that's going to be a challenge. So in terms of this being a make or break season, all this stuff summed up, I don't. They could have a losing year this year, and it's not going to break the team. The
You don't
key
think
to it, the
you
key
don't
to it
think
is,
the fans will call for Mike's head if this is a losing
but
season?
but 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 Art Rooney does not make his decisions based on the crying of the fans, and the fans will continue to come to the game.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
uh,
They know we're Steelers fans. It doesn't matter. You know.
right, and so I think really, but it's setting up the make or break season, which would be 2026. Because if they have a losing season in 2025, well, now the expectation is in 2026 that you see improvement and that you see the roster now coming together. But if you don't have that, well, then you could see, okay, well, now we're going to be going into a 3 or 4 year losing period, which probably means that Tomlin is gone after 2027, and then they're going to a new coach, and then we're starting a new chapter. And so for me, 2025 isn't make or break, but it's the prelude to the make or break season, which is 2026. So now what I'm curious about is how did my answers compare to what Bill had to say last week?
I think you can go back for Bill's answers because Bill, in a lot of ways, he echoed your sentiments, about his uh, Omar Khan, uh, and also referring to the Rooney record of not firing a coach. But as I said, I don't think it's as much about firing Mike as it is whether or not what happens when his contract is up.
Right, right.
So,
And
so
Jermaine Lockett he's in the comments saying if they bring in Rodgers, Tomlin is getting fired. Well,
that
they're
see that
bringing
that
in Rodgers because Art Rooney, Omar Khan, and Mike Tomlin all want him on the team. They those three, the owner, the general manager, and the head coach, they all feel that they're a stronger team with Aaron Rodgers than say with Mason Rudolph. And that's kind of now whether that's true or not, we're going to find out if and that's if Roger signs. So bringing him in, it's already, they've offered him a contract. It's just a matter. It's up to Rodgers whether he wants to play or not.
Yeah. We'd like to thank Jermaine for his comments, as well as Daniel from was it Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Thank you both for your comments. But so your final thoughts for tonight, Dave. What's what are you thinking here? As we get closer to was it the final signing dates, or is it in June?
The Well, they got the OTAs coming up at the end of May, and that's probably the next for the Steelers and for the NFL. That's probably the next big thing is the OTAs. And for the Steelers, I think they begin around the 27th of May. Um, but yeah, I'm not going to talk more about the Pirates. That's going to be a long season. I talked about it at the beginning, and it was nice to be in PNC Park. It's a beautiful park, but man, I wish the owner would put a more competitive team together. But what I was going to, Sue and I were talking about, she is mad at her alma mater. She is angry. Um, Penn State is spending $700 million to renovate Beaver Stadium, the football stadium at Penn State. And at the same time, they're closing down 6 of their Commonwealth campuses, 6 of their satellite campuses. And that kind of really hits Sue the wrong way, because it's kind of like, Penn State, it's a state school. Its original mission was for Pennsylvania kids, for Pennsylvania students. Well, in-state students is down to 58% at Penn State main campus. And so, what's happened, it used to be like around 70,
Right.
80%,
Yeah.
back in the days. But because they make so much more money from the out-of-state students and from the international students, it's really, really tough for a Pennsylvania student to get into Penn State. It's actually easier if you're from out of state. But the thing is with the satellite campuses, I think they have like 13 or 16, what they have. Well, those are almost 100% Pennsylvania students, and the tuition is much lower. And usually a lot of kids that are don't have the means, they'll go to these satellite, they'll go to a Penn State Beaver or Penn State York.
Right. We have a bunch of them out here in California, University of California at La Jolla,
Yeah,
University of
and then they
California.
would transfer into Penn State, Maine, their last 2 years. Well, shutting down 6 of these satellite campuses, well, they're by and large affecting all Pennsylvania residents. But they can put $700 million into the stadium, which of course is a big revenue maker. But man, it would be nice to see if they could do something to save some of these satellite campuses, because that's what a lot of these kids, especially lower mid-income kids, that's what they rely on, because Penn State's not cheap to go to.
Oh no, no,
Yeah.
no.
So my final thought is I hope that Penn State somehow rethinks this, and I just hate to see these 6 satellite campuses go. And I know a lot of people that have gone to them that never went to Penn State, Maine, but they think of themselves as Penn State students. And that, that's just the way it is. And I know that they have declining enrollment in Penn State or in Pennsylvania, but even if they had half the students at some of these satellites. There's got to be a way that they could keep some of these facilities open. So that that's my final thought for tonight.
Yeah. Technology is a wonderful thing. Even if you don't necessarily have that, brick and mortar building,
Right.
we've learned how to use it. So, there are other resources. But anyway, hey, David, it was good talking with you tonight. Hopefully next week some of the guys will wake up. I think Reggie will be back next week for sure. Uh, Don is still honeymooning, Don and Demetrius. So we have two bachelors that have been taken off the playing field. So, we wish them well. And hey, maybe did we get you off a little early? Yeah, we got you off a little early today, Dave.
Yeah.
So you have a great night, a great weekend. Tell Sue we'll be looking forward to another corner next week. you know,
Will do.
I think some of the guys thought she wasn't coming on, and you we got yeah. Now Bill comes on when we're going home. So, uh,
All
uh,
right. Well, I'll see you next week.
all right, you have a good one there, Dave.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, yeah. Bill, we were expecting you a little earlier. Um,
Gotcha.
we were expecting you a little earlier. It was only three of us, but
Got it.
so we'll see you next week, my man.
I will see you next week then.
All
All
right,
right.
Bill.
Have a
Good to
good
see you,
evening.
man. It's been
Okay.
a while.
Yes. Well, it'll be more. Wait. Hold on. You actually won't see me. No, you will. Yeah, you will. You will. You will. You will. You'll see me next week. Yes, I didn't remember what week that was. I will be back next week.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I'll see you guys later. You have a
See you
good
soon.
weekend. Yeah.
Take care. Ciao.
Good night.